think many of you have had a webinar with me before. So I'm Lucinda and you're most welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm the founder and CEO of Actus, and in case you're not aware of what we do, we offer a complete performance learning and talent management suite and lots of training and consultancy as well. So we will send you links to any of these things. So if you'd like to know more about those at any point, please do take a look at these. And I'll also put up at the end, we're running an open demo at the end in early July. So if any of you want to have a look at what we offer, then you'd be very welcome to join us on that. And we'll give you the opportunity to sign up later if you're interested. So focusing in on hybrid working, what we're going to talk about here. So in terms of the challenges that you are finding, and I'm imagining that, well, obviously, if you're in the UK, which not all of you are, you're in the UK, that life has changed again, things have gone out another month, so maybe that people are going to stay remote for longer. Maybe you're in an organisation, certainly I can see people in the NHS, where you've got people who are already, well, if you're in the NHS, many of you will have been working within your various organisations as per normal. Unless of course you're in more of a central function. So just interested, what's your position at the moment, those of you out there, in terms of your organisation? Are you working in a hybrid fashion? Are people starting to use the office, or are you all still remote? Tell us what your plans are so I can get a sense of what it's there. But also, I'm going to put a poll up in a moment. Some of the common challenges that we see or I'm finding that people are experiencing in these sort of hybrid or semi-remote setups, these tend to be things around, well, the things I'm hearing time and time again are around visibility and availability of people. I'm going to put a poll out as well, so you can choose more than one. You can tell us which of these challenges are you concerned about, or you think you're having to deal with. So is it being able to see where people are, get hold of them when they're remote? Do you have a concern about people not being able to switch off, so people getting emails at all hours because of the way in which things are linked together? I'm just checking that Gemma or Caitlin can keep an eye on the waiting room, because it says there's 4 people in there. Do you challenge about multiple messaging platforms having confusion? So are we finding that you've got so many places where people are getting information that perhaps you don't know which one is the right one to use it? Logistics of getting people into the office, or availability, how you're managing that? Visibility of specialist skills, how about that, where people saying, if we're all remote, how do I know who to ask about certain things? Lack of information sharing, or people feeling isolated. So tell us in the poll. There's a poll up live now. A number of you have found it. Tell us which of those ones are you most concerned about. Perhaps choose your top 3, and then I'll share. It'd be interesting to see what you are finding. I'll say I've been working with a number of clients who are, well, one of them in particular is moving to an entirely your choice way of working, which is quite a nice way of doing this. And I've been running these focus groups with them, and these are the messages, these are the things that people are talking about that they're finding tricky. So from that particular organisation, so it's an organisation, financial services organisation. So we've got 21 of you have had a chance to vote. If any more of you would like to quickly vote now, it should be able to just quickly vote and find the poll. I'll give it a few more seconds and then I'll share. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there we go. So interestingly, so the main concern that you've got at the moment is people feeling isolated. That's interesting in terms of if someone's remote and this conversation is happening in the office, or is it because people are just feeling isolated, being away from others? And then the other one, managing visibility and availability of people and difficulty switching off. So those are consistent. If you are concerned about a challenge which is different to one of those, can you let us know in the chat, because I would be interested. Okay, so what I'm now going to run through is some tips that, where I've been working with these clients, that we've started to put in place, where we've been educating people on how they can, how we can overcome some of these, or we can manage it in a really positive way. So my take on this is that if we're in a hybrid environment, what we really do need to do is it requires a high trust environment. And that's about, and it's interesting, I'm looking at Mark's comment here, you've experienced whether people have treated equitably or not? Are junior staff not trusted, or more senior people say they can't unless it's convenient for them? And that's interesting, isn't it, about the whole difference between juniors and seniors. In fact, I'm saying that actually, in order to work in a hybrid fashion, we have to have a high trust environment, and it means we have to treat people like adults, whether they are senior or junior. And if we want it to work, rather than that sort of parental type culture where we assume that people aren't doing anything, if we can't see them. So these are some of the tips, that are things or the concepts that you could share with your organization to help try and make it work. Now, one of the first ones is to help people recognize their personal responsibility of being in an organization effectively. We need to remind them that they are interdependent. So if you are somebody who has specialist skills that people depend on, then it's a balance of choosing where your location is relative to your availability, whether it's online or face-to-face. And also, if you are someone who, let's say, who's choosing to stay remote, then making sure that you are responsive when people have dependencies on you, because they can't come and knock on your door, they can't necessarily see that you're in the office or otherwise. So we all have responsibilities to manage the locations we choose to work in, our availability, maybe communicating our availability, and our levels of responsiveness. In terms of that, I think it's useful for people to think about how they're part of a bigger ecosystem, because very often, if we've got used to being quite self-sufficient at home, you can easily become quite selfish and think, well, actually, this is easy. I can sit at my desk. I've got an office. If you are one of the people who actually prefers working remotely, and I can just get my head down, and I feel that I'm able to be very, very productive. But what I have to remember is that I also work as part of a team. So like the previous slide, they might have dependencies on me, they might have needs. That we also have customers, all of us, to whatever shape, even NHS, you've got patients, you've got needs and your internal customers as well. So we have customer needs, and there are overall organizational needs which are necessary for us to meet if we're going to make sure that people are able to, I guess if our organizations are going to carry on being sustainable. So helping people think about, when, even though they've got used to doing whatever they're doing for 15 months, that they may actually need to make some changes for this to be sustainable. If you're going to choose to a hybrid working pattern where people have choices, they need to think about interdependency, and they need to be prepared to think win-win, and have a sort of the sense of what win-win is with their internal relationships. Now, win-win is a concept I'm sure we've all heard of, a bit of a cliche in some cases, but if you've ever come across the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey thinks about this concept of thinking win-win, requiring high courage, because you actually have to think what's good for you, but it also requires high consideration. And whereas when we've all been remotely, maybe it's just been about looking after yourself and being productive, what we're saying here is when we're making choices about where we work, or we've got a hybrid environment, then actually it is about encouraging people to think and communicate with high courage and and consideration. So I've got some examples here of this, which perhaps you can tell me in the chat what you think they are. This is an example of a scenario just to bring the concept to life a little bit. So James is a manager of 8 people. He likes to be in the office every Monday. 3 of his team have actually said that they much prefer to work from home on a Monday. James decides to schedule training in the office every Monday. So tell me in the chat, what type of thinking is James demonstrating? Is he demonstrating win-win? Is he demonstrating win-lose, lose-lose, or lose-win? What do you think? Who's going to be the first to tell me? There's a bit of a delay on this, isn't it? Absolutely. Absolutely. So most of you have gone win-lose, and I would say it's win-lose, although Sharon, you've gone lose-lose, and you're not wrong either, because what Covey would always say is that actually, so he's saying win, I'm saying it's win-lose because of the fact that he's basically meeting his needs in terms of the win, but he's not considering the needs of his team, so he's thinking win-lose. But what ultimately happens, what Covey says, and this goes back to everything being sustainable, is that if we play win-lose with people over a long period of time, ultimately it will end up as a lose-lose, because people will potentially vote with their feet, and vice versa. So any long-term, exactly, so you've gone long-term marks on short-term win-lose, but long-term it would be lose-lose. and she works from home because she's got a long commute. The majority of her team work flexibly, but they tend to be in the office on a Wednesday. Jane has not been put under any pressure to be in the office, but she feels excluded. She's feeling isolated from the team meetings because when they're all in the office talking, they forget that she's dialed in. Jane's feeling she must come into the office on Wednesdays to continue to feel part of the team, but feels really stressed about it and losing time to travelling. So what mindset, if she decides to come into the office, is Jane demonstrating there? What mindset would that be? She decides that she's going to put her needs second in order to come in and feel part of the team. So probably she's going to end up in a lose. It's not meeting her needs really, potentially, in terms of this way. So she's going down more of a lose-win mindset. So on either of those, could any of you suggest, now I mean, it's probably quite hard, actually in the interest of time, I was going to suggest a win-win outcome, but I think without unmuting, we've got a few too many people to unmute it. I'm a bit short of time, so I'll just go on and give you these examples. These were examples, and those were that came out of the clients I've been working with. These are possible win-win options, but you could come up with something else. I mean, the point is actually not for us to prescribe the win-win, it's for us to encourage our teams to come up with the win-win. So James might, if he was thinking win-win, he might think, do I really need all of my team to be in the same place at once? They might trial some virtual training so they can do things remotely, or people can be wherever they want. And it's a success. So then he's in the office where he wants to be and his team can be wherever they want. Jane, on the other hand, she might talk to her line manager and they might trial an open Teams room. Now, have any of you done this? The organisation I'm working with, a few people have had this success. So it could be open Teams or open Zoom. So it's not the same as where we're getting people to be spied on, Big Brother, which I think has been reported quite negatively, but it's where people have chosen to sort of put their collaboration technology on and co-work together, so that if they go, oh great, I just won a deal, or oh, that's really annoying, then people can react in the same way as they would do in an office. So Jane, they do this, so they all dial into while they're in the office so that you can see each other, and Jane can see them all. She feels part of it and doesn't have to come into the office. Have any of you tried that open Teams or open Zoom or Skype or whatever type approach? And if you have, what to do? Was it a success for you? I have to say, I'm not sure I'm a massive fan personally for me, but I can see if you're a close working team, that may well have some benefits. I'd interrupt people too much, I think. And I'm too interruptive when I'm in the office. The guys have to tell me to go home sometimes. So if you want to encourage people to have win-win thinking, here are some questions that you could use, or you could get your managers to use to get them to think about win-win. So you'd ask them, if you're going to work remotely, how are you going to maintain strong relationships with people that you don't see regularly? And actually, I know that people have been doing this for 15 months, but actually, how will you make sure maybe some of those relationships need strengthening? I know some organizations actually feel their relationships have got stronger over this period of time. But, challenge people in these sort of things. How frequently do you think you need to meet people in person to stay connected? What ideas have you got about maintaining visibility with your key relationships? How will you ensure that you'll be fully effective with your choice of work style? And how will you know if your new working pattern is working? So all of those are coaching questions, but they're very strongly putting the accountability on the individual, which I think is helpful in terms of getting people to think about their responsibilities and with regard to their relationships and interdependencies. So then if I was going on to other tips, now these would probably be more centralized. These, to be honest, each one of these points, we could go through these in turn and spend almost a whole webinar discussing these. And these have come out of focus groups. What I'm saying here is you don't have to use these tips, but maybe in your organization, talk to people about what does good visibility look like and clarify what the expectations are. That's what I think we need to do, because the reality is we've all evolved. The culture has evolved to the way it is now. And some people, I work with businesses where no one turns their camera on, and I work with other businesses where everyone turns their camera on. And it makes a difference actually in terms of how people feel they know each other, and maybe how involved and present people are when they're on a session. So I would recommend, if you haven't got some already, have any of you got this sort of thing defined already, by the way? Tell me, have you got something similar? Maybe define some behavioural recommendations for people, define the etiquette around that visibility and responsiveness, and make sure it's shared in terms of expectations. It's almost like a charter or a competency, a competency with relation to remote working, in terms of how do we operate in this new world where we might well have people in a variety of locations through choice potentially. So have any of you used that already? Tell me if you have in the chat. So those would be recommendations, and those have come from the horse's mouth in terms of people who said those are the sort of things that they find are challenging. So it's about making some of those stick. I don't know if anyone likes any of those particularly. I mean, an interesting one, if I'm going to pick on those, is that, again, depending on what your technology is, and actually I'm going to ask you what your technology is in a moment, just out of curiosity, actually, to see how you're working with it. But there's certain things here which I think, don't be present, don't multitask, putting your camera on. But then there's other things about people feeling able to maybe manage their calendar to create time when people can access you. So this is when I'm happy to be interrupted, almost if you're in an office where you'd have your door open, or where you have your door closed when you're actually trying to focus on things. This is an interesting one. I thought expectations around social attendance. We know that some people are, will do, Jessica. We know that some people are, some people like socials, some people get sick of socials. But what can happen now is, back last summer, maybe everybody was attending a social Zoom, the team quiz, whatever it is. Now you've probably got the usual suspects that dial in for the team coffee. If you are going to a hybrid environment, maybe it's worth prescribing, saying that there is a certain level of attendance available. And I think that's an interesting one with regard to social. You've got to work out what works for your culture. But maybe on a team by team level, if you're having, I don't know, 6 socials a year, that you'd expect everybody to attend at least 1 or 2, assuming they're within working hours, I suppose. But just making sure that people can't isolate themselves. And of course, that's an interesting one, goes into anxiety and mental health, is sometimes people will withdraw, the ones that actually need that social support most. So maybe you have to talk to people individually. What I'm talking about in the email footer is, you can edit your email footers. We had a big conversation about this yesterday, where people saying actually it's quite useful, say if you've got a holiday coming up, maybe putting your footer, I work Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, or I will be on holiday the week commencing 21st of July for 2 weeks. Just maybe making sure that we are, so much of our communication, maybe you tell someone I'll be on holiday in 2 weeks previously, so much of our communication is electronic, just suggesting that you can use your email footer to communicate more stuff. I've also seen people put, and I might add this myself actually, I occasionally respond to emails out of hours. I think it's quite important for managers. It's quite a good message. Occasionally I respond to emails out of hours. This is my working pattern, and I don't expect you to respond within that time frame. So actually, if you are somebody who's communicating or emailing at 10 o'clock at night, well, first of all, consider putting it on a delay. It doesn't have to go instantly, but you can also say, please don't feel you have to respond if I've done that. So I've seen a few people do that. Interesting observation, if you are someone who likes to respond out of hours, and this is really what we're talking about here, is it puts, some people see that as a pressure. If they get an email from their boss at 10 o'clock at night, they might see that they feel they have to respond equally, which means that work seeps out. It can also, for some customers, make it seem like you're too busy or you're actually overworked. So it might not set the right expectation or message to external customers. On the other hand, it might say that you're very dedicated. Again, courses, but it's an interesting thing to be aware of in terms of that. All I'm saying is think about your own culture and think about defining some form of etiquette for your guys. Then I thought it might be quite interesting just to share collaboration tools. And the reason, and not that Actus doesn't do collaboration tools, we use them. I thought it'd be interesting to get a sense of what everyone else is using. And the reason for that is that more than one of the businesses that I'm working with on this topic are finding that they've got too many. It's found that they are essentially, they don't know. I think that's what it is. So the conversation I had yesterday, this particular organisation appeared to have about 5 or 6. So people were instant messaging, they were using Yammer, they were using Teams, they were using a multiple of tools, and therefore actually, and if you're trying to get hold of somebody, they've been messaging them through every possible route, which can feel a bit pressured, makes it hard for people to manage their presence, and they may be getting called in the middle of a call. So interested to see whether or not there's clarity in your organization, and if there isn't, then maybe it is worth creating that clarity. I'll just give you a few more moments to communicate. Have I forgotten any collaboration tools? Anyone using something that I didn't think of? So I'll just go on to the next slide while I give you a chance to add in the poll. So what I would say is be clear with people about which comms or tech channels people should be using and when. If you've got multiple ones, then which do you use them for? We mentioned that open working together calls, so maybe using them to collaborate if you could do that. One thing that has come out, it was less of a challenge. Not too many of you said that that was a big challenge for you, but thinking about internal tools about making internal subject matter experts visible. A lot of them are saying, I'm not quite sure how to get hold of people. I'm not sure who's got the skills, so we don't always have that visibility. Using Unify Office. I probably should put that because I used to work for Unify Siemens, if it's the same one. What else was there? So, oh yeah, by the way, Actus has that. We've got a talent. We could maybe use our talent module for that, but there are various tools that you can use for this. So we've got 55% voted. Any more of you going to put your votes in on the collaboration tools? Think about the future in terms of induction and training. What I think we were pre-COVID is we were a bit lazy. We'd just rock up and do a PowerPoint, which you could update. Hi, Steve. So you could update things in terms of your training content, and we might have been a bit lazy before because we relied on in-person or live, but actually if we put a bit of time into building some collateral that you can use on an ongoing basis, then that's actually much smarter anyway. People can, they can look at the videos or the learning or the PDFs, whatever it is, they can refer to it as and when it's relevant to them. And also, again, going back to the individual, encourage people to create positive habits around proactive information sharing. So pop it in group chats or having open chat sessions. So if you've been in the office and you did pick up a useful bit of information, maybe you might want to say, well, it's Friday, it's Facts Friday, share some information. Just encourage people to think about pushing it out on things. One of the points I didn't put on here, which we use Skype in our business. That's our preferred, and we have chats for everything. So I might have a chat on new product ideas or on specific customers. And so you put it in the chat, and it's quite helpful to get back to it. So you can have that asynchronous communication there. So when people can log on and get that information as and when, and it allows us to collaborate quite effectively. So you can see that Teams is by the majority of you is the most popular one that's being used at the moment. Some of you are using Google. Is that Google Meets or Hangouts or something there? Is it? Zoom, I don't think I've put Zoom because people are talking about it, but we don't use that for chat. Can you use Zoom for chat? I wasn't aware of if you can. Emails, a lot of it. The problem with email, I'm finding email gets quite slow, and it is probably one of the slow ways of doing it. So if you have one of the other ones, it is easier. So many people do know clearly which tool to use, and probably that's because you've only got one or two. But if you have got multiple, maybe it's a good idea to clarify which are the right ones to use, the best ones to use. Okay, tip 5 is just a reminder about change, right? I will just fly through this in terms of in the interest of time, but because I've done many sessions on change management, and we can do a whole session on it. But we have been working a certain way for 15 months, and it may well be that if you want people to work differently or to change their communication habits or start coming to the office, whatever it is, there is going to be a level of transition from July, whenever we're able to open up. And this is just reminding you that often people can go through this and they start stating, oh, for example, resistance. Well, it's just not the same as being in the office. Let's say you want to have a hybrid workplace where people are choosing to come in. Someone might say, well, you can't collaborate, we can't train if people aren't in the office. So you may just still hear people saying what's not going to work. And again, it's so, don't forget how important it is. Well, what would it be like if we were? So I know a number of businesses are using a trial, so they're having a hybrid working style trial. So how could we work it out? What might be an option? Might Zoom logins work, or all of us having screens and collaborating, even if some of us are in the office? So reminding yourself of that transition curve, that people will go through various emotions, as even though it feels like it's not a change, it is a change going to hybrid from fully remote. And these are the sort of things you might hear people saying, which could make it could introduce conflict. So helping people through that transition curve, the way in which we do that is really about listening to people, and we'll talk about that in the future slides. It's not necessarily about dictating, although I am saying give people clarity about what the etiquette is and what sort of tools to use. So how might you set your team up for success? One thing is, I think it's worth reflecting on our own mindsets. You know, actually, am I truly open-minded about making sure that other people are able to choose when to come in, or do I want things to go straight back to how they used to be? And we keep seeing things in the media, don't we, where you've got certain managers who've got that real, so business owners that have either gone, yeah, we're going to go fully remote, or on the other hand, but they're sort of saying, no, everyone's back in the office, and they've got this parental culture. Ask yourself, you know, how could I be more creative about running meetings or training? If I'm choosing not to go in the office so much, because actually I prefer it, what's the impact of me choosing to do that on them? Remembering about our own taking responsibility for our own levels of interdependence or otherwise. And I'll definitely say involve your team in coming up with solutions. Get talking as a team. So, you know, when was the last time we went, okay, what are our team commitments or deliverables? What do we need to deliver as a team? What are our shared needs in terms of where people want to be, their working patterns? What can we agree to make sure overall we're delivering our commitments and playing win-win? Ignore what gaps or opportunities presented by my choice. It's more about my choice. What I'm meaning by that is, if you're saying people are having to come in fully or they're staying at home, you know, what are the challenges or opportunities presented by that? How can we maximize win-to-win, and how can we hold each other accountable? Because this is something that everybody has to choose. It's not just for line managers, not just for HR, it's for everybody has to choose to make things work in the new ways of working. So in summary, these are our 7 tips. Let me know which one you thought was perhaps the most useful that you might do something with. So which of those might you do? Talk to people about interdependencies, and maybe help people realize they've got to think win-win, explain how to think win-win. Might you define behavioral etiquette, simplify your collaboration tools and landscape, or clarify what people need to do? Maybe will you need to help people go through change? Do you need to challenge your own mindset and be a bit more open-minded? Are you insisting that people go back to a certain way, and actually maybe that's not in everyone's best interests? Or are you going to involve your team in creating the solutions? So what do you think is the most important thing? So challenging their own mindset, you think, Gemma, is going to be the key there for them being open-minded. And it is about this adult to adult approach, isn't it? And we've all had to be like that really for the last 15 months. So why we would necessarily suddenly start treating people as children to be another piece. If only there's a business would do for number 4. Okay, yeah, so you'd like to do 4, have simplified, Steve, you want simplified collaboration, but win-win is really important. You've got to start with that mindset, haven't you? Any other thoughts? Tell us in the chat what your thoughts are there, as to what you might want to do. And if anyone's got any questions, so win-wins come through is quite a key one. Do let us know what those questions are. So in terms of what's coming up, so the next 2 webinars, I've got 2 more webinars this month in terms of this leading culture change and 10 steps to successful hybrid working. I'm going to have to go and remind myself what the content is of that, as to make sure it's not exactly the same as this one. I think it's a previous one that I've run before. If by any chance you are interested, Steve, are interested in our forthcoming open, it's an open demo on Actus. All the previous polls have been empty. I'm just going to put up a poll. If you're interested in joining that, you can. We're going to test this. If I can allow you to complete a poll, if you're interested in joining us, I think we will be able to invite you there. So there's a poll there that you can complete. And hopefully we'll be able to see you. But if for some reason we don't manage to download it, then let me know, because I'll email you directly. It's the first time I've tried to get non-anonymized data from the poll. So we're doing that. And then just a reminder, our remote training courses, they will start again from September. They've been really, really popular. We're running open ones and we run in-house ones, and we will be slanting it more to how to manage in a hybrid environment, but it's still management skills 101, but with that hybrid slant, which is different. So that kicks off on Monday, the 6th of September. And also I'll be running another Change Superhero session kicking off September. We will send you the slides, don't worry, and there's a recording, a link to the recording, because I know some people have come in later, so do feel free to do that. Here's some other useful Actus resources that you might find relevant all about this. I have also done a hybrid working podcast episode if you come across the HR Uprising podcast that I run, so you can by all means look at that, and there's a final link there of all of our links. And finally, do connect with me on LinkedIn or otherwise. So thank you so much for joining. I'll just keep an eye on the chat. If anyone's got any specific questions, do please pop them in the chat. I'll give you a moment to do that. Complete the poll, or feel free to go and enjoy the sunshine. I've got to say, the clouds come out. I was hoping to go and sit in the sun now, but the clouds come out here. I'm hoping it's still sunny where you are. So thank you very much. I'll keep an eye out for any questions, and if there aren't any, then I will say thank you very much for joining us. Do join me on a future webinar. I hope this is of interest to you, and see you next time. Done, Caitlin. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm just going to close this down.